most critical is the EC community. The EC community covers a wide range of spectrum and capabilities and challenges. Everybody's not the same in the EC program, and so it's really important that families be engaged and that the school system be engaged with families to understand what's unique about that child, what does that child do well, what does that child need a little bit of help with, what does that child need a lot of help with, and what is something that that child's not ready for right now. And so it's important, the motto of the school system is about having everybody, ensuring success for all students in the school district. And I think that's important, but it needs to also be the mantra for the EC community. We want all the children, we want the EC children to live good, successful, productive lives, independent lives, as independent as possible as adults. And it's incumbent upon the school system to do its part to prepare all of those children, all of our children, but particularly the EC community, for as independent a life as possible. And so, all the programs specifically that Gary and Kathy and talked about, I think that's all absolutely correct and support all of it. But parental involvement, particularly in the EC community, is critical, and it's important for the students and the school to work together with families. So.
And students too. A lot of our students step up and do stuff with the EC, especially the TTA classes and things like that. There's amazing things happening in our schools, especially, but they do it by, let's go read to them, or let's go take them out to the playground. They're doing a lot. The kids are doing a lot of stuff because they're being, that's how they're raised, to be nice to them and take them out and do stuff. And I do think that there's a lot of inclusion with that, and that they're
to treat them well.
Yes, it's great. It's amazing to see some of the kids in the schools and what they do for the EC students. It's amazing. And I agree completely with parental involvement. You should go into the schools and see what's going on. It is amazing stuff that is going in there. And it's good to have a great principal who thinks the same way about that as well. So.
Did you have one?
Yeah, real quickly. The origin of that question, was it generated from a parent that felt as though there were no opportunities?
The origin is just years from a parent with very mixed, experiences from elementary to middle to high. And so it's seeing a little bit of ebb and flow, and obviously COVID, a lot less flow. So just wanting more of that. And yes, I do believe some of our high schools and some of the principals have been absolutely amazing, and they do good things. I'm always looking for what more can we do? How much more? Because the TTA stands for Transition to Adulthood, which is, I think, very specific to Union County. And what more can we do to bring these kids to transitioning to adulthood? How much more, especially when we get into high school? So that's kind of where it's coming from. And I don't speak just for myself, I speak for other parents.
I think that's great. There's a lot of stuff that the TTA classes do now. So they sell stuff at Christmas time and at Halloween time, and you can go in there and they take them to shopping, and so that they understand about shopping. In Target, you'll see buses in the parking lots of Harris Teeter and stuff, and they're bringing them to teach them, things that they can do when they're out of the class. So, but I understand that there's differences between elementary and middle and high, and I understand that that's something that we have to.
And if I, just 20 seconds, Ms. Bloomer, honestly, if more parents felt that way as their child matriculates from elementary, middle to high school, instead of just allowing mediocre services to be provided to their child or their children, because you're supposed to expect more, and a lot of times there are some parents, and I've seen it when I worked as a TA in Charlotte-Mecklenburg and even in Union County. Some parents, they use their child as being special needs as a curse. And it's not a curse, you know? It's a blessing. And so you find don't allow what you can't do to hinder what you can do. My grandmother taught me that, and I live by it. And so I encourage you to be that advocate, to, you know, encourage parents, you know, to really seek for more opportunities for their children in this arena, because I'm telling you, they are some of the most pleasant individuals to serve you. I've seen some individuals, and I've been to some restaurants, and some of us can probably attest, that I would rather have someone who is polite just like they are than somebody who supposedly has it all together. You know, and at the end of the day, when we serve them right, they'll serve us right. So,
Great.
And
Thank you.
the reason I asked that question is because I hope, in hearing what you heard tonight, one of the things that I want to do this campaign season is educate. Educate the citizens on their rights and opportunities. You have the power to move the needle. And if there's an issue or situation that exists, I want the parents to always know that you are empowered to step forward with that issue or concern.
And I will. All right. I believe her. Okay, Brandy.
Hi guys, my name's Brandy.
Hey, Brandy.
My question is more to the newer candidates, but I guess if anything has changed, anybody can answer it. I'm gonna circle back to some controversy topics as mask and vaccine mandates. I was fortunate enough to work in healthcare, to have family members who are in child psychology, who kind of helped guide me along the way with my 3 little ones. I have 3 under 6, and 1 was a COVID baby. I also had a pediatrician who spoke out against masks for young children, and was lucky enough to have her write this board several times. I guess my question to you guys is, with a lot of the data that's coming out showing the negative effects of masks and vaccines, the CDC has now moved milestones back in children. I am so grateful that I had people and a pediatrician to help guide me, because my almost 2-year-old is thriving so much faster and better than a lot of the other 2-year-olds. I think when we look at physical health, everybody forgets about mental and emotional and behavioral health. So if you were presented, because if we're watching closely, we may find ourselves back to mask and vaccine topic soon. Will you mandate masks and vaccines for all kids? I've taken a peek at some of your bios, and as far as like medical exemptions, I just want to say 2 things about that. I worked for some very fine doctors in Union County who wanted to write mask exemptions for children who needed them. And we were told by CEOs in suits that we could not write those mask exemptions for children. It came down from upper head, and if the CDC and the state requires it again, are you more amped to side with them or to step out and respect more parents and their thoughts and views of things?
I just figured we'd just go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off. Okay.
I'll start with this one.
Okay, Colleen.
I am at UCPS because of mask mandates where we were. We were at a local charter school. We had 2 children for 2 totally different reasons. We were told, but we also knew that our children could not wear masks. And we fought that battle, and we fought that battle, we fought that battle with 3 different forms that the school put out. That every time we had our physician sign it, they changed wording and said, oh, you have to have this new form. And by the way, until you have this new form, your child can't come to school. But we're also gonna call the police because your children are now true. And so because of that, and because of the reasons that our children could not wear masks, we're in UCPS. So I wholly will not vote for any type of, any medical mandates, mask, vaccine, anything. I think that's between a family and their medical providers, not for the school to decide.
Let me start with this. None of us in this room, prior to 2 years ago, had ever lived through ourselves, nor anyone in our families had ever lived through the experience we've gone through as a country and as a world in the last 2 years. The last sort of global, I mean, human history, there's a bunch of pandemics that have happened. The last one was 100 years ago, right? So there's not a person that we know in our lives today. There may be somebody who knows 100 years. There's not a person that we know who's been through this, right? And so I don't fault the nation during the prior administration, the current administration. I don't blame the nation, the state, or the local for doing what it thought was best at the time. Trying to understand through these new dynamics, new information. We know so much more today than we did 2 years ago. A year from now, we will know more than we do right now. So let me start with that. My children have not had an issue with wearing masks. I totally respect there are folks that have that issue. My kids have not. We have not made it a big deal. We've just included it, and they physically haven't had any problems with it. And we're in preschool. My youngest was in preschool with a mask and for a year, and then my first graders, like now first graders, the twins, went a whole year of kindergarten. Their kindergarten was masked. At this point, what we've now come to, where the CDC is, where the state is, where the research has come in, it does not appear that masks are necessary, but it is a cost benefit, right? So there has been, like the research that has come through, incidence of COVID in the school age population, it has been roughly 20% lower in schools that were mask mandatory than schools that weren't. There are costs on the other side, right? So as Brandy mentioned, there are the issues around mental health issues and the issue of wearing a mask, and it's all cost benefit. I don't blame the board for making decisions that they made in the first year of the pandemic, in the second year of the pandemic. I disagree with the decision. I don't disagree with the decision that was made last summer to go mask optional. In July of 21, the COVID rate in this county was extremely low. There was virtually no transmission, like 20 cases a day, right? Totally get it. I was out, my kids were out, none of us were wearing masks anywhere. By the time the school year started, we had seen other states ramping up, and we saw Union County ramping up. And so at that point, where I felt like the board went the wrong direction was not at the peak of that Delta variant, not going with a mask mandate. And I'll say this, at the time, and again, this is what was going on at the time. At the time, the toolkit allowed for folks in the schools to choose not to have masks, but if you were not mask mandatory, and there were close exposures, that's where the quarantines and all that came from. There was a route. If we had been mask optional, we would not have had nearly the level of quarantining and folks being in isolation, well, not isolated, but quarantines, that we did. Had I been on the board, I would have approached that issue differently. I would have engaged in the conversation with the state differently. I think we chose, as a county and as a board, to take a more confrontational stance with the state. That famously, blew up in the way that it did. The state has now come around in a different direction. But in the midst of that, children lost an enormous amount of school time. Thousands of kids lost weeks of school time, and their school was interrupted and disrupted. So I understand it's not going to be necessarily popular with folks in the room, but back last summer with the toolkit where it was at the time,
Dave, I'm sorry.
I would have voted that. The toolkit is now in a different place. I would not support that at this point today.
Really quick, just because it's getting cold, who ordered a mushroom Swiss? Shayla needs to help me with that. I get part of that too.
And can they say again what their name is when they make an answer, because I'm so bad with names.
Okay, so before
I
you
just
get
need to circle back one
Really
quickly.
quickly.
My name is Colleen Kamolnik, I'm running for District 1. Mask optional does not mean you cannot wear a mask. Mask mandatory means my child has to. The county didn't mandate it. So what about all the rest of the citizens? What about the adults? What about the immune compromised in the community? Dennis Joyner didn't mandate it, but he asked our school board to. Our least vulnerable population and the most at risk for those mental health issues, for kindergartners learning how to speak and not seeing their teacher's mouth move. And our county, mask optional, had lower rates of COVID than similar demographic counties that were mask mandatory. Follow the science, not the mainstream media.
So Krista, you'll have so much good stuff to say, but Krista, we're gonna have to start cutting people off.
We understand.
And I stink at it, so I'm gonna pass it off.
There
Krista's
you
going
go.
to. I just don't.
I just wanted to share my experience. After coming here from California and dealing with COVID that first year in the schools, it was absolutely horrible. I wish I actually had homeschooled them, I wanted to. I actually took my kids out and I put them in a private Christian school this last year. It's been fabulous. No mask and no quarantine, and everything was fine. I'd get a letter telling me he or she was exposed, and everything went fine. There was no issues, and it could have been that way for USPS too.
All right, so can we let two of the other candidates answer too?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Do you need the mic?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay.
I still remember my teacher voice.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot topic. For me, from the beginning, one of the things that I asked myself, when we look at masks, why does it have to be either or? Why does it have to be either all mask or mask optional? Because we know there are some schools that, being mask optional, you have 99% of students who don't wear a mask. Then you have those that are mask optional, that 99% of students do wear a mask. But why did it have to be either or? We were at the Lake Park Festival. We were, they did let the districts vote. But, whether it was a state, a state
They
thing
give
or
you two
the
options,
district.
optional or mandate, just FYI.
Yeah.
Okay,
I know, but
we're
that's
not
what
gonna
I'm saying.
interrupt the candidate when they're responding, just.
That's what I'm saying in general, that was the option, either mask or no mask. So since the beginning, I just wondered, why is there like no middle ground compromise? Why, the kids who need to see their teachers, talking, they need to see their mouths moving when they're learning phonics or whatever. Why did it have to be just like so black and white, mask or no mask? Why was there no option for a middle ground? Maybe some kids that are younger not wear a mask, maybe some kids do. So anyway, that was my question from the beginning, and I know perhaps that wasn't, that wasn't up to our board. It was whoever higher up in politics, whoever was telling people what to do.
I'm sorry, Maria.
In regards to, okay.
We got 2 minutes this time?
2 minutes, okay. Here, one thing, first of all, I want to talk about is I was accused, or there were accusations made, when I made the decision to vote mask optional, that I was playing politics. And my response was, no. This is a core belief of mine that parents decide about medical devices for their children, okay? It's a core belief. You got to come into this job with core beliefs that you can lean on when you have decisions like this. The other thing, I want to talk about quarantines. At the height of our quarantine, we had 5,700 kids quarantined. You know how many ended up getting positive? 99. 99. We took the least vulnerable population, our kids, to COVID. And we have done social and emotional damage to them, and I see it in my son who's in 9th grade. And we have not even begin to see the educational damage. We did a summer session last year, and half the kids that we wanted there were able to there because we had a challenge of getting teachers. We have yet to see the effects on these kids. We have had suicides that rates have been doubled for our teens, and wait until EOGs come out, you're going to see some stark damage that we have done to almost a generation of kids.
See it every day.
And because I support, and we're going to do it with our own dime, we're going to have another summer session. We're going to try and get as many of these vulnerable kids in as we can and try and catch up. And I'll support another one the summer after that until we get these kids caught up.
Did everybody?
I will go after Jody because she wanted the new candidate. No, go ahead.
I'm Keisha. So Jody McConkie, District 4. So to reiterate a little bit of what Steve was saying, at the beginning of this, none of us knew what was going on. Nobody knew what was fact, what was theory. I mean, nobody knew. And as we heard, some doctors thought one way, some doctors thought another way. I mean, everything was upside down. And you actually said two things that I really want to touch on. First, you mentioned that CEOs, or somebody said that no exemptions, and that shocked me. And I'm sure I've heard it before, but it still shocked me, because there are absolutely kids that, even sensory, that they can't wear something on their face or they will just not function. I mean, there has to be a compromise there if there ever were to be a mandate. So that really shocked me that that was actually what was being told. So that tells me that those people were not educated on really, I mean, the fact that even my own daughter, she has asthma and she cannot wear an N95 because she can't draw enough breath. But she can wear the surgical mask and she's fine. So, I mean, there are legitimate reasons, and that should always be honored. So that really shocked me. And the other thing that you said that really resonated with me was our kids' mental health. And I mean, masks are one thing, and isolation's another. I mean, put it all together, and it's just a devastating soup. We chose to have our daughter on Plan D for virtual because she has asthma and we have other issues in the household. And I thought, this is gonna be great, it'll be fine. It was a disaster. And regardless of what happened, she was going back to school this year. So it's something we always have to keep in mind with anything moving forward, is how is this now gonna make things even worse? You know, it's definitely consideration. So those two things really resonated with me.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you want?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'm gonna deal with the elephant in the room, right?
Awesome.
In September,
And what is
I
your
voted,
name, honey?
what, Kathy Heintel, District 6, sorry. In September, we had 5,700 students sitting at home in quarantine. And yes, it worked out that only 99 of them got COVID, which is awesome. But the governor in the toolkit said that if they wear a mask, there's no quarantine. Last year, the year before, we had so much loss of learning. We had 1 day of school, we had 2 days of school, it wasn't right. So going into this school year, we needed kids to be in school. And that was what my vote was about. And I know that people didn't like that, but that's where I was. I don't believe that masks are the thing that would help anything. It would just allow kids to be in school. And that's where I was. And after that, I have voted for mask optional all along. So I'm the elephant in the room. So the other thing is I would never ask anybody to do a vaccine if they don't want it. That's up to the parent, and I would never do that. We didn't even do testing at our schools. There was a huge push to do that, and we didn't allow it. So I just want to say that.
All right, Benton.
Politics or not, there's a lady in the house. The lady gonna go first as far as I'm concerned. Steve reminded me about that September, the confrontation with the state. And it was me that made that motion, and I'm Jimmy H. Benson Sr., District at-large. It was me that I made that motion back in September. I made it the first week on the 7th, I believe it was, and then I made it again on the 6th, so then the next week on the 13th or 14th, whatever, however it played out. And I made that motion because email after email after email after email, you could just hear the pain of the parents. They were getting wore down with quarantine, isolation, all of this stuff, and the child was healthy. The workers, be it whatever transportation facility, school bus driver, were healthy. One after another. That's where those numbers came from. And I am a preacher, as is Reverend Kirkpatrick, and we share some of the same tenets as far as our denomination is concerned. I'm a preacher, and I do hear from the Lord. And the Lord put that on my heart. And I drafted that motion. And I had my family go through that motion. I sent it to different people to see how it said. It wasn't a flippant thing. I understood exactly the repercussions. But I say today, as I said then, if I have to go to jail to protect the parents, then I just have to go to jail.
You haven't gone yet, right?
No.
Okay, good.
So, keeping kids in school is our number one priority, I believe. I believe all of us can agree with that, okay? Kids need to be in school. Serving in District 1, I know a lot of children that cannot afford to stay at home. And at the time, I'll be the first to say that from the toolkits from the state all the way down, it was very confusing. All right, I'll say that it was very confusing. And when I came on, this is all that we were talking about in March. I mean, I'm like, I don't get no vacation or piece or anything. It was straight dealing with COVID. Do I agree that masks are 100% the safest thing? No, the only 100% protection is God. I think we can all agree with that. But that doesn't stop us, I believe, at times from going to the doctor and getting checkups and things of that nature, or going through procedures and what have you. At the end of the day, when it comes to vaccines, that's a choice. I have never said that vaccines should be mandated. My objective of having mask mandates at the time was to keep kids in school. That was it. Because I know that there were kids in our district that would be home by themselves with no supervision, no food, no anything. So to keep children in school, from what the toolkit said, that was number one priority. I know because at the end of the day, wearing a mask, it may help, but I've had COVID probably twice. My wife had it and she suffered, I had it and I didn't struggle. So I understand that just because you wear a mask, it doesn't mean that you may not get COVID, all right? There are people that I know who did not even wear a mask and did not get COVID at all. At the end of the day, I believe that all of us in this room, we're trying to figure this thing out. Do we always make the right choice? No. Are there going to be choices or decisions that we may not agree with? Probably not. But at the end of the day, I promise you, it is not, my stance was never driven for an individual cause. I wanted all kids to stay in school from the western part to the eastern part. And so going back to the vaccine part, that's a choice. I'll never encourage or tell somebody you have to do this, because at the end of the day, that's your choice.
We have a new question. Thank you all. Okay.
You're welcome.
Deb Helms, you had a question?
Okay. Deb Helms, no, most of you probably heard about this. I'm
refuse to have this COVID toolkit conversation again, but I would love to
Yes,
hear from
please.
you what you would propose the third option be, but that's a different question, we can have a different conversation. The COVID's over, it's done, we're moving forward, not talking about it anymore. What, and specifically the new candidates is what I'd like to hear, but maybe if anybody else has something. What is the biggest change that you want to make on the board, or the biggest obstacle you see moving forward with UCPS?
That's a good question.
Good question.
I'll go first this time. Jody McCarthy, District 4.
Thank you.
It's all good. I'm horrible with names, better with faces. So, the first thing that always pops into my head when I think of things like this is consistency. And that could be consistency with everything. It could be consistency with sports offered, consistency with other extracurriculars, consistency with electives in the school. We have some schools that offer so many opportunities for our kids, whether it, again, be after school or during school for electives, but then other schools that have just bare bones. Now, there are so many things that play into that. I mean, there's, let's face it, money, but, you know, staff, and, I mean, there's so much to go into it, so I'm saying just in general, because of course, that all has to be a consideration, but it's something that even when I was a teacher, I saw across the elementary schools, and as my kids got older, across the other schools, I see it. If people talk about it online, I mean, social media is good for something. You see what's really going on sometimes, and I've seen just so many parents saying, well, such and such school has this opportunity that'd be so great for my kid, why don't they offer it? And as an example of something that has been worked out, like ROTC, Porter Ridge, there's Piedmont and they have ROTC. Well, Porter Ridge goes to Piedmont to join up together for ROTC.
You guys
So,
start cutting the time to see more
okay,
now.
so just bringing consistency so all kids have all the same opportunities.
I can't say just one thing, but I can keep it to 2 minutes. There are a lot of
A minute
things-
and a half now.
A minute and a half.
Oh.
80 seconds. I'll give her 10 seconds back. There are a lot of things that are already on our books, already in our laws, that I believe every school board has the intention of following, and we have to follow through that the principals and the teachers and that everyone who has contact with our children are also following. I don't believe CRT has a place in our school. I don't believe we should sell our children to third-party vendors. We're there to educate, not indoctrinate. I think we should totally, fully eliminate Common Core. You've heard me speak before, in my house we carry the one. I don't know what these bars and purple elephants have to do with that. I think we're over-sexualizing our children through the smut in the libraries that needs to go away. Grooming our children. 5-year-olds being told how to speak to their parents about transition plans. It is too much. These children need to be taught math, science, English, and go back to our sex ed plans that are on the books, in the laws, that it's a monogamous heterosexual relationship that keeps you the least vulnerable to the things out there, biologically, medically accurate.
I was talking when you asked the question, but the biggest challenge, I think the biggest challenge that we are facing now is the loss of learning, and we have a lot of kids who need to keep up or to bring them up, because we are gonna have an issue with letting kids go to another grade when they're not at the level that they need to be. And I think that goes from east to west right now. The other issue that we're dealing with that's a big challenge is discipline. For the first time since we've been on the board for a while, and we've never had the number of discipline appeals that we have today. We sat through 6 hours of it last week on appeals. And it's in the elementary schools. There's kids vaping in the 4th grade in the elementary school.
Yeah.
So I don't know what happened when everybody was at home, but it has to stop, and it has to start with parent involvement.
Yeah.
We know that successful schools has parental involvement, and we need to have that in every school. Things are a little wonky right now, and we need to fix some of those issues because the discipline is hurting us even more because they're in classes and they're interrupting what's going on, and it's difficult. So we need to fix that right now, and it's difficult. It's a challenge that we're working on very much.
I'm gonna take that a step.
And I was Kathy Heinzel, sorry.
I'm Gary Sines, District 3. I'm gonna take that a step further, and I think the biggest challenge is literacy. From K3, you learn to read. From then on, you read to learn. How many, let me ask you, in 2018, what percentage in the state of North Carolina do you think was at or above the reading level in 3rd grade? Statewide, what do you think it was? How many kids were? 57%. 43% of our kids in this state are not reading on the appropriate level, on grade level.
But we've been addressing that with literacy, right? We have Jolly Phonics, we have Orton Gillingham.
We're experimenting, we're gonna throw the
letters.
kitchen sink at it. How many of you here in this room are reading buddies? Is anybody a reading buddy? You want an eye-opener? You go sit with a 1st grader for 30 minutes a week as a reading buddy. We have 1,400 in this county, in this school system, and we need double that. We need triple that. Sit with a kid and read and see where they go. I got one boy, he's in 1st grade, he doesn't even know all his letters. He doesn't even know all his letters, and we're almost 3/4 of the way through 1st grade. Now, do you think he's going to be on grade level at 3rd grade? No. That is a challenge. The other part of that is students that have the challenge of dyslexia. I don't know if any of you have family members that are challenged with dyslexia. Yeah. Well, 20% of students have dyslexia. Oh, were you telling me to stop? That's something that this state does a terrible job with. We do not address that the way these kids need to learn. And that's a part of literacy. Thank you.
That chime means stop, right?
Yes.
When you hear the chime.
And especially when she says stop. That means stop.
They don't let anybody in the school.
I don't listen to
We gotta listen for the chime.
Like a gong.
You have to do better than that.
I'm Steve Martin, District 6. I want to address something that was said a minute ago. My children are blessed to grow up in a house with a mother and father who have raised them, and we're married. We've been married for 19 years this May, and we have a great, stable home. I want to focus on where's the kid coming from. It's not the kid. My kids have nothing to do with the fact that my wife and I are married. It's not their fault that we're married. They didn't do anything to make us married. I want to make sure that we've got kids in school whose parents are divorced. That's not their fault. We've got kids in school who may have a parent who is gay. That's got nothing to do with the kid. And so I'm concerned. I understand and I totally respect where they're coming from a religious perspective. What your belief is, what your faith teaches you, I completely respect it. But in the school system, every kid matters. And so I don't want to have us preferring or treating, my kids, because they come from a family, a traditional nuclear family, any differently than their friend who comes from a single family, or their other friend whose dad might be gay. That kid needs affirming, love, respect, and made to feel that the kids are normal and a productive part and a valued part of the society. So that's not the most important issue or whatever, but I just wanted to address it.
Your time's up.
Thank you.
Maria again. I think one of the obstacles that we're gonna be facing was created because of COVID. The shift to putting everything online.
Yes.
Doing everything online. Yes, yes, it is. And from a teacher's perspective, that's terrible because, well, I taught chemistry. So chemistry is very math intensive. So teachers who teach math, chemistry, physics, it's very math intensive. So In order for us to accurately know how well students are doing, we have to see the work. And so when you think about them doing absolutely everything on the computer, there's a Canvas quiz, you get them to do a quiz, they submit the answer, it grades it for you. Some teachers, they are asking the kids to submit the work so they can review it, but I feel that that's not the same as if they submit their work to me and I can see step by step and see what they're understanding, what they're not understanding based on their steps. So I think one of the obstacles moving forward is going back to how things were before COVID. It's gonna be hard because the kids have been doing it for 2 years. They've been doing everything on the computer for 2 years. And if you, it's become commonplace to them. It's what they're used to. And getting them to transition back to that environment where they don't do everything on the computer, where they actually have to engage with their peers and have a conversation, that's gonna be really hard. But I think to me, that's the biggest obstacle. But shifting back is what's gonna get us to recover from all that proficiency that we lost during COVID.
Anybody else?
Let me address and Steve outlined some things about children. To me, the greatest thing to put in place for what Steve was talking about is if when little Johnny and little Janie come to school, right, the plumb line is what Colleen said, reading, writing, and arithmetic. We do that, then we cover the child, we cover the basics. We be aware of all of the issues in the child, but if we simply teach the child when they're in the class, all of those other issues, those are home issues, and if it gets to the school, we deal with it on the child by child basis. We don't try to create a whole environment. If we just simply teach the children, then we cover the basics.
Yes. We good? Okay. Trish?
So, our children have suffered a lot over the last couple of years. We've been watching them go backwards. They're unable to pass a standardized test at this point. And we are married, we are stable, we feel like we do everything we can for our kids, and yet, when I asked for help last year for my children, I was told they don't need help. And this year, I'm being told that my oldest is reading below grade level. So my question is, I love hearing Gary say literacy, I love hearing back to the basics, I love hearing everybody say back to the basics. I feel like we're all in agreement on that, and there's too much screen time. My question is, what's the hard stop on all of this screen time, and how exactly are we going to get back to the basics? Because I see my kids suffering, and I don't know at what point it's too much time has gone by.
Well, let me take a stab at that. I don't know, and I was not aware before I came on the board, what the State Board of Education and the Department of Public Instruction, how much control they have over the curriculum and the way it's delivered. And the state budget restrictions, they don't give us money for textbooks. Everybody's moving online. Now, you've got teachers that can print off, their own worksheets, but then you got the problem of quality control, this going there and that. Unfortunately, that is the trend by the powers that be. That is one of the first things you learn on this board, what you can't control. And unfortunately,
I want to add to that. The state requires that students to do all of the standardized tests
Testing.
online. So we're required to have computers for the students in order to do that. That's the state mandate.
that doesn't take my time.
Sorry.
Sorry. How old is your child? Did your child have an IEP? Does he have a 504? He's just mainstream. What grade?
When I, 6th grade, she's in 6th grade.
Okay.
And our pediatrician, when I said she does not like to read, our pediatrician had said, when often, she's been doing this for 30 years, and she said when she sees kids that don't like to read, there's often a reason behind it. And she said that I was able to ask for them to evaluate her. So we did that last year. I had to force the issue. We got the
And you do.
evaluation. I had a Zoom
Yeah.
call with the principal and a whole bunch of people.
Yep.
And
Yep.
everyone told me,
Yep.
she's fine, I'm crazy, like, I'm worrying over nothing. And now, so now she failed her EOGs. I will say
Yep.
she failed her EOGs.
Yep.
We did not know at that point, because she's our oldest, we didn't know if she was gonna go to 6th grade because
Yep.
of failing her EOGs, yet she had
Yep.
been an AB student all year.
Right,
So she went on to
Yeah.
6th grade, and her NC check-in came in last week,
Yeah.
and it said that she's reading at a 5th grade level.
Yeah.
We
Did you want to take your?
don't know what, like, where should we be concerned, or what do, you know, and if our child's suffering,
Mhm.
think of the kids in District 1, we have all the resources in the world for our kids, and they're going backwards, what's going on in the rest
That's
of
what
the
I
facilities?
said, read,
But how-
the gap, okay.
So that's what I'm asking, like, where's the hard stop on, we know they're getting too much screen time in school. So how do we get?
Well, you're talking about two different things now. You're talking about literacy as far as
Well,
reading, and then you're talking about screen time.
Well, because here's what I know about school. My kids watch CNN she watches CNN 10 social studies. My kids are.
That's a very small
they're getting
period.
surveys.
That's a couple minutes to
No,
catch up.
I know, I'm watching this stuff, but I have now a whole laundry list of all these things my kids are being exposed to in school, yet they're going backwards. So where do we get back to the basics that everybody wants to do?
So
How do
the
we get
whole
back to
idea of having computers is the teacher is supposed to teach, and then they're supposed to do a worksheet or something on the computer. It's not to be learning on the computer. The teacher's supposed to teach the lesson, and then they're supposed to do the work so that they understand it. And personally, I will tell you something. My oldest daughter never, ever passed the EOG for reading, ever. She is in Virginia Tech right now because her brain goes to math. And so she's in engineering, so don't give up.
Thank you for saying, thank you.
I'm
because
being
we
honest.
don't
It
just may
worry
not
about
be
that.
her calling.
And when I say never, I mean
Yeah.
never.
My daughter failed them.
And
I
yes.
don't care.
And I will tell you that she never got held back, and to this day, she doesn't like to read, she just
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
But my youngest one loves to read and would love to do anything but do sitting reading. So when I'm telling you that, and we had her tested, the school tested her, nothing's wrong with her. She's fine, she's fine, she's fine. And so we just let it go, and she does fine. I don't know if that helps you from
Yeah.
that perspective, but.
Get with us afterwards, because I want to talk about, how was she reading before COVID hit?
She's never been a fan of reading.
Okay, well, that's maybe not her calling. That's
Grace
maybe not her
never
calling.
would pick,
Yeah.
I don't even think she's read a book.
Yeah.
And I'm not seriously joking.
Yeah.
I'm not joking. I'm not, I'm serious. And she's at Virginia Tech
Yeah.
and doing engineering, and she loves it because it's math and it's science and it's all the cool stuff she loves. So, you know, yeah.
But when the teacher said.
And I hired tutors and all this kind of stuff. No, she doesn't like to read.
I was just gonna add one thing. The teacher did recently say that was somewhat comforting, but also not comforting, in that, she's actually doing very well because of the last 2 years.
She said that
So we can't
not
have
to
that as,
worry, not
but
to worry
that's
because
where
of
we
what
come
they've
back. We
been
can't
through.
erase the last
Yeah.
2 years
Yeah.
and say, now they're starting at a new standard. No, we have to have the same standards as before, and we gotta get them back, to Gary's point earlier, we gotta get them
Yes.
back to that standard.
Yeah, we're not gonna get there in 1 week.
Right.
You know, think how long we were shut down. Then you had summer, and then we were going, 2 days a week. And so there's a gap. There's a gap, and we can't make it up in just one, a couple weeks or a month.
Colleen. And this is not quite a left turn, let's just say bare left. So I think it brings up the point of teaching to test instead of teaching to learn and having the fundamentals. So your child did well in regular school. Your child didn't do well on the test. Okay.
It's okay.
So
Yeah.
maybe the test is flawed. Maybe the thinking behind the teacher teaching to this test, the standardized test, when I was growing up, we had the CAT test. And maybe that's not the solve-all. Maybe let's just teach them regular math and regular science and regular literature and have them have a good foundational knowledge and understanding of the core subjects. And if they test well, they test well, but, I mean, if the kids go on without passing the test, why are we subjecting them to all the stress the test causes?
So how do the parents know
The
that?
state requires it.
We are first, our oldest is always gonna make us first-time parents.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so how do we know? Because that's the thing, I mean, we don't know. We've never raised a child before, so we get these grades, we get these things back,
Yeah.
and we go
Yeah.
into panic mode.
Well,
So,
why don't you get with us
Afterwards.
afterwards, and let's talk about your
afterwards about
specific
it.
case.
Okay.
You're not a bad parent, okay? You're not a
well,
bad
not for that, but.
You're in the same boat.
We're gonna move on.
Yeah. You're in the
But
boat with a lot of
it's
people.
stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Sorry.
It is.
We
When
gotta move
your
on.
child's having
Yep.
issues.
Some people are really good at tests, some people aren't.
It's right.
Period. Okay, next is, so Steve, you tried to be sneaky, you wrote 2 questions, it's just 1. Can you ask your field trip question?
Not you.
Steve
I
Smith.
submitted no question.
The field trip one.
Well, now that this meeting went on for an hour and a half like that, it's made me kind of change my mind about things just a little bit. But I'm gonna keep it civil, okay? Now, because she knows me too well.
And you gotta go.
Now, this is for all of y'all, okay? Both the existing members and the ones that trying to replace said members because maybe you have a different protocol, okay? I will say this as easy as I can. When COVID first hit, my stance never changed, okay? We got a lot of people around here that believe in God, and we got a lot of people around here that don't, but they believe in something, okay? And I can tell you right now, just like that other guy in that other school board meeting said, that I believe in my kids. I believe in all our kids, okay? And we as a parent are the strongest force out there, okay? Now, I grew up in the 70s, in the 80s. I grew up at the time of busing. Are y'all familiar with the term?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are y'all old enough to know what busing is?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was exposed to a lot of culture.
Yeah.
That's why I'm friends with a lot of people of other races. Okay?
Yes.
No matter where you come from. No matter your background. Okay? I'm also was raised in public school. I was never in private school. I am what you call a special needs person. Okay? Is it visible? Can you see it? Can you understand it? Do you know what my need is? Can you?
Yeah.
Can you tell me what my need is? Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
I am deaf.
Yeah.
I am 95% deaf. Okay? Without my hearing aid, I cannot hear. But I can read your lips. But the question of it is, with a mask on, can anybody read your lips?
Good point. Yeah.
Okay? When you talk to a person that's wearing a mask, and y'all done this for the last 2 years, y'all can hear.
Fair.
About how many can you understand? Okay? How many can you understand? Okay? Now, y'all can hear me, correct?
Yes, we hear you, Steve.
You can understand me, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that being said, what are we gonna do? And I understand where she's coming from, the back to the base and stuff like that. I've got 2 kids. They got their own special needs. They learn 2 different ways. Okay? One of them, he might not like school. But you get him down behind a video game system, and I let him play. Get him behind a video game system, his eye-hand coordination, he can put you things in places you can never make. And I play video games since the 80s. Okay? I like to think I'm good, but I ain't nowhere near my 12-year-old son. He can watch a YouTube video at the same time he's playing. He can level up a video game like nobody's business. Okay? He does great in school. He passes in grades and stuff like that. Not exceptional. But my question to y'all, thank you for mine. My question to y'all is back to basics. When are we gonna talk about equalized simple math. It gets you through life. They make the same simple decisions as car loans, automotive loans, the stuff, political science, the branches of the government, stuff like that makes you either make a good decision or a bad decision, because all these are voters.
And 5.
That make sense?
You know I love you, Steve.
You get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
Y'all
Heard you
support
loud and
mathematics on political science and political math or applied math.
Okay.
Great. There is, to your point,
Yes.
there is a school of thought that we are not trying as much to teach kids to read or to do math. We're trying to give them knowledge so that they can think. And I think that's where you're going with that. It's called core knowledge. Basics about the United States, basic math, certain subjects that teach a kid about life, that he's going to need to progress in life. Now, the fly in the thing, the problem is that we're graded EOGs, and schools are ranked, principals are held accountable, teachers are held accountable for test scores in certain subjects. So what do you think they're going to teach or push? What they're going to be graded on. And that's math and that's reading until you get into higher grades, and then there's other things. So you've got a conflict in the system. It makes sense for them to learn knowledge about the world they live in. But everybody's held accountable for these things. So that's the conflict in the system.
And I think that some of the stuff that that the state, shocking, has been doing. So civics is a now thing, and personal finance. So that everybody can do a resume. You can, my daughter had to do this. How you write out checks. How they had to pick a profession. They had to pick a place to live. They had to find an apartment. They had to know how much it would cost to live in that. Do they need transportation? Do they need loan? How are they going to pay for their cell phone? Because God knows they need their cell phone.
A personal budget.
But that's huge, and they're learning stuff that they need to do no matter where they go in life, right? If it's career, if it's college, it's important, and we are doing that now, and it's a great thing. When my daughter brought it home, it was amazing that she had to figure all this stuff out, and how far away do you get, and no, because I can't afford that. Can you leave my cell phone on your
real fast.
Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, we're gonna need to, okay, so we're at 9:02. We have 2 questions left. I'm not even gonna go with the official questions anyway. The whole thing where I was gonna stop it and I was gonna ask the ones I'm gonna make sure y'all get your questions answered. So we have 2 questions left. It's 9:02. So.
Keep that horse going.
Okay, if you need to get up and leave, that is fine, I completely understand. I wanna be, cognizant of everyone's time. Okay.
Include us?
I mean, yeah, actually.
No.
Okay, so then, Richard Gaunt.
Hi, thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Welcome.
Over the last couple of years, the health authorities have been granted an enormous amount of power, and that power has had a huge impact on education. Considering the decisions that have been made over the last couple of years, how has it changed your level of skepticism towards health authorities?
Towards what? I'm sorry?
Skepticism.
Are
we skeptical of the health authorities?
It's made me hugely skeptical about what experts tell me is right. It's made me hugely skeptical about why you can say that our children in schools need to be masked, but those same children on the weekend don't need to be, or in quarantine can be outside of their home. Are they a danger to society, or are they not? It's made me hugely skeptical about what we put in our bodies and what is safe when people are dropping dead from strokes and, blood clots and all these things that's now a norm. And it's just younger people who are unhealthy. These are professional athletes. How are they unhealthy? So I will tell you that I have lost a lot of faith in a lot of I won't say my medical team, but I'll say the healthcare experts out there.
I'll jump up early.
Agreed.
You're looking at somebody that takes 15 medicines a day. I know I don't look like it, but I do. I take 5 in the morning. I take 6 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon.
None of them are memory pills.
And I take 7 at night. At 40 years old, I had a stroke, and that was 23 years ago. I know some of you think I don't even look 40. In 2009, I contracted the diabetes. I quickly laid that foundation to say, I believe in science. And when that argument came about do you believe in the science? But I will have to tell you that to Richard's question, one has to be skeptical when scientists who thought differently 2 years ago were pushed to the side and called non-science.
Yes.
Right? Where the ones that agreed with the pattern that was going on, they were called real science. That's my contention on that question. And that is, science don't need no help, and science isn't afraid of science. The reason we got the science we have is because other scientists or other labs had issues that they put up against what was said to be the science at their time. If it didn't hold muster, then it didn't hold muster. But if it held muster, what was the science of the day, now you have a new science. And that's my concern, that people that have opinions about a major issue, Richard, if it's not the following the pattern or analogous to what people are making the point, get pushed aside, and that's my concern.
I agree with that statement about science, but I want to take it one step further. I've lost faith in the media. I've lost faith in social media. I grew up in the age of Walter Cronkite, okay? He'd give you the news. You draw your own conclusions. Now we got 24/7. We've got a left over here or a right over here or what have you, giving it through theirs. And then you've got people like, then you've got big tech that is censoring a president while in office, saying that, and they're unregulated and they can get away with it. So I'm skeptical about what I'm fed from the media and what I'm fed from the scientific community until I see all of the information, and I'll draw my own conclusions.
Exactly.
Scientific method is one of the greatest achievements of human history. It is what drives us into a civilization. It's what continues us in a civilization. I agree with what Reverend Benson just said. Science is not afraid of science. It's not afraid of challenge. That's the whole point of science, right? Is to test things, test theories, prove them out. I think the public health community, however well-intentioned it is, does a poor job of translating science into everyday life and what we're all supposed to do with it. And there's a huge disconnect there. In this last couple of years, like I've not been concerned about, like, what's concerned me is when there's like a fad treatment. They're like, oh, we all gotta do this. Well, is there anything around it, any testing around it? Well, not really clear. I'm fine trying to go do the testing. Go do yesterday in the news, there was a huge study around ivermectin. I haven't read the whole thing. I don't know whether it's, but it reached whatever conclusions, but it was a multi-month field study of ivermectin. Fantastic. Learn it, whether it works or not. But I think we've been so pressured to have quick answers. Science is best when it's got the room to figure it out. And I think in this period of time, when we're trying to have, what's the answer of this, what's the answer of this, the ever-changing toolkit freaks people out, because, you know, how do we know what to do? So I think that's the biggest failure of public health, is understanding how to translate the scientific method and the knowledge that's happening in the background into practical skills of how we're actually supposed to implement and do things with it. There you go.
And how has your level of skepticism changed?
My level of skepticism about the real science, the scientific method, hasn't changed. Like, folks are doing the work, they're doing the research.
The health authorities.
Around the health authorities, where my level of skepticism is, I don't think they have, yeah, I am skeptical, because I don't think they have always translated well and understood the practical implications of what they put out. Yes, we should all wear masks. That's fantastic, but to Steve's point, that doesn't work if you've got a classroom with a deaf kid, right? So then, how do we deal with that in this situation? So, public health hasn't addressed that. They're trying big numbers, not always, so I'll sit down. Bring it. I'll talk, I'll talk.
I'm gonna sit down so I don't get buzzed, okay?
There's no immunity with buzzing.
Immunity. I think when we deal with science and we deal with the media, or just deal with anything, you have individuals who have sincere objectives. There are some people who are really concerned about the state of humanity, and there are some people that are out there for the almighty dollar. We get that. Within these last 2 years, I think that we have seen both sides. And when you see both sides, it really causes us to have a level of caution and to figure out, okay, were you just trying to get money out of my family, get money from my community, or were you really concerned about the state of our society? I must say that it has caused a level of skepticism, because at the end of the day, I know that I'm concerned about, I may not know your names, but this is the God-heaven truth. I am concerned about each and every one of you in this room. Your children, your families. If you see me at Food Line or anywhere, I want to know, how are you doing? How are things going? But there are some people who don't even care, and it causes those who have a sincere motive to look bad, because what happens is we put everybody in the same category. So at the end of the day, we really have to focus on making sure that, and pray. We have to pray that people are really doing the right thing, because the reality is there are people who are going to try to mess over us. There are people that are going to try to take advantage of us. But we have to make sure that we realize and understand that there are some people, there are some doctors and nurses who are out here who are really trying to tell us what is right so that our children can stay safe. Do they always meet the mark? No, they don't. But I believe that in the midst of us being skeptical and what have you, I believe that there are some people who really have a true, sincere objective and motive in trying to get rid of this COVID and trying to get us to go through it.
Okay, totally skeptical of health authorities, especially our health director. It was okay for us to wear masks. He wouldn't let us talk about quarantines or lessen it or anything else, but he was okay with everybody else in the county walking around. So I totally, and the other thing is, they're quick to get a vaccine but not treat the problem. So that's a huge thing for me too. You gotta read the Fauci book. I'm just saying. You have to read.
Okay.
Can I take 5 seconds?
I have a
Yeah,
friend
just
that works
5
with
seconds.
Fauci.
So
She
just
did
5
it.
seconds to expand on that. I'm not asking anybody to raise your hands, but think about any of you that had COVID and any of your doctors that offered any type of treatment. They're readily available, inexpensive pharmaceuticals. And then when you try to get those same medicines filled, if your doctor told you about them, or if you'd read about them online in some, hoodoo side corner where we all talked about treatments that were available. My family had COVID, but we had prophylactic medicines that when I called certain pharmacists, they're like, that's a veterinary medicine. You're talking about Nobel Prize winning medicines that no one tells you about because they're pennies. These vaccines are not.
Totally agree with that.
You get 5 seconds.
5 seconds.
Like, not
You
kidding.
are all owed apology by the government in levels way above even county commissioner or anything else, because when they came to us, they would not recommend for us to do what you were asked to do. So even at the county level, the state level, Reverend Kirkpatrick, you made decisions based on information that you were given, and I respect the decisions that you made. It was your decision. You made it in the heat of, made it in the heat of people looking at you and yelling at you. And Kathy, you too, you've done the same thing. Y'all have all done the same thing. But when we wouldn't do it as a county, when our staff wouldn't recommend us doing it as a county, by God, you shouldn't have been asked to do it either.
I think that's literally the shortest thing I've ever heard you say.
He didn't want to get that gong bell.
Okay, last question.
Last question, y'all.
This one's a doozy. Everybody behave. You're doing really well. Like, I'm gonna give everyone an A+.
Yay!
Okay,
Nobody got slapped.
well, maybe not everyone.
Standardized test or like the regular test?
Terry
Mainring.
Thank you. Yes, good work.
So mine is something that I never thought in my lifetime I would have to be concerned with when it came to children and the school board. And I understand you making the statement about gay people. My sister is gay. Her best friend in the world is gay. I don't want my 5-year-old granddaughter being taught about homosexuality.
Through the school.
That should be my job.
Thank you.
You are not her religious leader. I've got one of my own. You're not her parent. You know what I'm saying? I need somebody to teach my child math, science, English, literature, how to read, give her time to play on the playground. I will teach her that everybody is to be loved. That is straight from Christ. Love everybody. Stand up for them if they're being picked on. Love them, care for them. It does not mean you or anybody else has the right to confuse my granddaughter as to her sexuality. If she's got a vagina, she's a girl. And that's what I'm gonna teach her, and that's what her mom is gonna teach her, and that's our right as her parent and her grandparent to teach her. I would never teach her, and nor would she, that anybody is to be treated poorly, because that is not the way we ever want her to be. But it is our job to teach her about sexual orientation and transgenders and pansexual and bisexual, and I don't know all the sexuals that are out there right now, but that is not the school board's place or the teacher's place or the principal's place. And so I wanna know how you guys feel about that. If it starts sifting into Union County that you're to teach them about masturbation or whatever. I mean, all this stuff I'm hearing about that's coming into some of these school systems, it makes me ill. And
It's
I'm
not
serious.
coming here.
Okay.
It's not coming here.
Okay, I also completely agree. I think that certain values are taught in the home. The school is meant for those core subjects. Our children, all of our children, are not social justice warriors. We're not sending them to some camp to learn how to think. We're teaching them to school to learn how to learn and to learn how to think for themselves, not what to think because a teacher has an agenda. And I think that our school board has done really well at finding those things as they pop up, but people have to vocalize that. It is disheartening in our previous school that a teacher's classroom had a BLM flag, a gay pride flag, and no American flag. And that is not appropriate, ever. There are always going to be things in civics that are coming up, that are current events. I think it's okay to be discussed, but I don't think it's okay to help a child transition, to have those conversations without parents saying, this is happening in my child's life, can you help me navigate this with them? It shouldn't be behind closed doors, and I don't think that there's room for that in school, especially if we're not learning to read. Why don't we learn to read first, and then we'll worry about the other things later.
I agree 100%. At the end of the day, it is the parents' responsibility to teach their child. When you start talking about indoctrinating, that's the issue, all right? That's the issue. I believe that parents, as well as if parents and teachers in the school work together, then they may have those conversations, I believe she mentioned, about the consent of the parent. All right, inviting, because there are some things therapists and psychologists that they are trained to help a child, but that's only through the consent of the parent. So I think we just have to make sure that we focus again on what is the main thing when it comes to educating our children, but we have to make them aware. I think the problem is when you have that individual who has a hidden agenda. We have to be aware of what's going on in our society. We have to. We cannot keep our children in the dark. They have to know this is a part of life. This is what's going on. And at the end of the day, we understand that you make the decision. Your parents help you to make the decision. But closing them out and keeping them from feeling as though this is not a part of society, even as a pastor, there are some things that I don't agree with. But I understand that in my church, that people will come from all walks of life. I have to love them. I don't try to indoctrinate people to say this is right or this is wrong. So I think we just have to make sure we have the right people in place, teaching our children, the right support staff, and making sure that parents are not left in the dark. So
I want to address part of what you just said. So we can do what we can do as a school board, but then the teachers in the classrooms may do something different. So and I didn't really understand this until we moved here. So there's no unions in North Carolina, but they get contracts by state statute. And there's only certain reasons that we can get rid of a teacher or fire a teacher, and it's difficult. It's not an easy thing when they have a contract with the school system. And that's something that we've been talking to the General Assembly for a while, because we do have issues with teachers, but it's difficult to fire teachers. Is that fair?
Yep.
It's very fair.
And to your point, oh, I'm sorry.
Just so everybody understands, like, we can get complaints that this is going, and it's happened to my students in the classroom, and it's difficult.
How long is the contract for?
So it depends, 2 or 1, 2,
When
and
they're a new teacher is 1, and then they get 2.
Then, yeah, if that one's up.
and principals and APs get 4.
Okay, Jody.
So just, listening to this and coming from the perspective of a teacher, I remember one year we had a kindergartner come in who on the books was female and had a female name, but dressed like a boy. And as we got to know her, it became more and more apparent that she wanted to be a boy. She basically started saying that. As a teacher, we didn't say anything to her, or at least, I mean, I can speak for myself and the other special area teachers, since we all taught her year after year, that we didn't say anything to her, we didn't say anything to her parents. It wasn't our place. So when I hear about things like this, and the first thing I think of is, when are they even teaching boy-girl? And now, things in books, that's a whole other subject, but like curriculum-wise, if they're not even teaching a boy versus a girl, then, I mean, if it's not in their curriculum, why is it happening, you know? We didn't feel it was our place to say anything. It wasn't in our curriculum, it wasn't our business, you know? So if it's not in the curriculum, but it's still coming up, that's always something that should be brought up to the teacher and find out why is it being brought up, and hopefully it's something that was a misunderstanding or can be worked out. But just coming from that perspective, because I remember, and we had her for several years, and if you saw her when she came in versus when she left, I mean, but again, never said a word to her or her parents. It wasn't our place, you know, it wasn't our business. So just wanted to add that in. I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, you've already gone.
Well, you know, parents have the right to opt out of sex education, right?
Everybody knows
And
that, right?
even in higher grades, if there's literature that a parent objects to, they can opt out, right? You know that.
I didn't know that.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can opt out.
Yeah.
We can opt out for movies.
Make sure.
You have to
the
sign
form-
something for
Yeah,
them.
the form comes at the beginning of the year, and make sure if you want to opt out, you send it back. Because it clearly says if you do not send it back, then you're giving the teacher the ability to select the curriculum for you. Okay, so send it back.
It's good information. I'm gonna listen now.
And you can actually go preview the material at the school
before you decide. So a lot of parents don't realize that. You can request to come into the school to preview
Go to the
all your
nurse and
hearings.
The nurse can send you a link now and you can watch it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
really?
And it's not at the beginning of the year, it's right when the lesson's about to occur. My
Right.
son's in 5th grade, about to go through it
And you
now.
decide.
And they give you a 2 or 3 week period
Yep.
before time.
Yep.
And they want you to opt in and opt out. The form is for both. You sign where you want your child to
But if
be.
you don't
And
send
just
it in,
one
we
thing to
make
say, it's not opting out that's the problem, it's how the teacher might ostracize your child if they do choose to opt out.
Well, that's a
That's
whole
where the
different
fear,
kettle.
and that's where the indoctrination comes in.
Well, that's the other thing with books, right? If this parent doesn't want them to read the book, and then, so that's something we've been dealing with in 5-1 to try to figure out how to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can opt out, but you're not part of the class discussion and things
They're
like that.
ostracized.
If the teacher's not good, they
I
could
understand.
Yeah.
It's,
We have 5,000 employees, and sometimes it's a little hard to keep track of all of them. They can get a little bit off the reservation sometimes.
Okay. Well,
Can I say something before?
yes, absolutely, Maria.
Okay, completely unrelated, but it just kind of came to mind because he was asking like, how do we get back to those basics and teach students the actual math they're gonna use, you know, in their adult life, and then the lady back there, sorry, I don't remember her name, saying, that her kid, you know, with the video games, it's, you know, you can come home and do that and it's fine, but the reading was a problem. So, at the school where I was teaching, and I've seen it used, but I think mostly elementary schools, the State Employees Credit Union does a program, and I forgot what they call it. I think it's called the Reality of Money, but don't quote me on that, because I don't remember for sure. They come in and they play a game with the students where they assign them budgets. So they have, this is like, they come in with a bunch of cards and they do these activities. They set up like different stations with different things, like a store, a car dealership, a credit card company, just all sorts of different like life things that we do as adults. And then they assign each person like a little budget card. And so each student is responsible for using their budget and making, like living their life with their budget and still having to go to the store and purchase their groceries and all this stuff. This was high school. And so when you think about it, you're like, huh, little kids, you know, that's a game. So when we think about games, we think, oh, little kids. But I think sometimes we have to realize that if we want to teach something, because today's generation is learning things in a different way than we did. Like they learn differently than we do. Like now they have games. We started out with games like in the 90s, but you know, nowadays it's more commonplace. So we can't be afraid of having them learn in a way that when we learned would have been unconventional. We have to be open to them learning in different ways. My son came home one day, because he struggles with math too. He's one of those kids, like he hasn't been proficient in math for a while. And he was struggling with multiplication. And I know he likes video games and he likes building. And I keep telling him, you're gonna need math to build. But okay, let's see how we can use your video game to build. So he's like, well, maybe if I use Minecraft, that can help me when I'm practicing my multiplication. And I said, great, let's bring Minecraft out and let's work on it. And so sure enough, 9 by 8, he built something, 9 blocks by 5 blocks, and it helped him. And you know, that is so differently than how we learned. You know, with the teacher up at the front of the board, you know, direct lecture teaching, and we can't think that we have to go back to that, because kids are learning differently. So my plea to you as parents is just be open to your kids learning something in an unconventional way that you wouldn't have thought of yourself learning it that way.
That's fair. That's fair.
Can I take that a step further?
No, you can't, because Benson already raised his
Oh.
hand.
Age before beauty. You raised your hand?
Yeah.
This is the school board, you raise your hand.
Sorry.
I was just going there.
To your question, you have every right to be concerned, because it is creeping in, not unaware. Scripture says unaware, but it's keeping it aware. This thing that's, Florida just did, trying to, keep that in the home, at least until the 3rd grade, of which folks have gotten a hold of it. Reverend Kilpatrick talked about, or somebody talked about the media, I forget who it was, has switched it around. You have every bit to be concerned. Parents, grandparents, please, whatever material comes home, check it out. Become Perry Masons, if you will. I know I just aged myself. Become Paul Drakes and investigate everything.
Become a substitute.
Don't let nothing come into your house from that kid's school that you're not checking out. You scrutinize it, and if it's got anything that you have concerns about, then you pick up that phone and call the teacher to talk about it, because we can put a lot of this to rest. All right, with what Disney is doing with, you talked about, all of the various categories, what Disney is doing, not saying boys and girls, males or females, just whatever they're saying. This stuff is here, it's real, and as Gary Sides says, as long as I have a seat at the table, it ain't coming to Union County, North Carolina, but we need y'all help.
All right, Gary, quickly.
All right, very quickly, I wanted to expound upon the comments Ms. Maria made. Union County has one of the best systems of academies in the state. That means kids that are not destined to go to a 4-year school or are not continuing on or into the military have other options where they can go straight into the workforce in great paying jobs. Yes. My son is over at CATA in the automotive technology unit. We are going to develop a curriculum leading the state on electric vehicle repair. He can come out, they go to Hendrick on field trips, and Mr. Hendrick handed him a card and said, you come to work for me, not only are you going to make 60 grand, I'll buy you a whole new set of tools. We've got the healthcare academy with the hospital. We've got other academies. We've got a culinary academy at Porter Ridge that can send these kids right up to Johnson and Wales. We've got them all over, all different kinds of things. That's because we're trying to adapt to the way these kids have an interest, the way they learn. Not everybody is destined for a 4-year school, but we have places for them to have a worthwhile career.
Perfect. All right. I will tell y'all that we were in Mecklenburg. We moved to Maryland, then we came back. We saw the writing on the wall for Meck, and we specifically chose Union County because of it's just an exceptional county. So y'all did so well. Even you, Bill, you did a good job. It was iffy. It was a little dicey for a few minutes there. But I want to thank everyone so much. I'm going to be smiling the whole way home because a room full of adults actually got to sit and ask questions and have a conversation and dialogue about issues in a civil way. And that was my dream. That was the Monster Liberty Union County's dream. And I just, well done. That's all I can say. Thank you again for everyone coming tonight. Nobody's gonna hear from me for about a week because I'm stressed out about this. And I didn't need to be. It was pointless to stress. So thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate it. Candidates, are y'all open for people reaching out to you if they did not get an answer? Okay.
Yes,
please do.
We got all the questions done that everyone wrote down, but I'm glad that y'all will be open for that.
And I'll be glad to stick around for a few minutes. It's not my bedtime yet, so.
As far as the floor, just a little plug, the Florida bill that was just passed, the state of Union County just did a podcast on that. We'll be releasing next week to try to talk about all the different issues from all different perspectives and just to have the conversation. All right, thank y'all. Keep conversing.